I had the same but much more powerful experience within the ayahuasca ceremony that was something to describe which is beyond words, which is a knowing. It's not a knowing with the brain. It's not a knowing with the mind. It's a knowing with the entire being that is unwavering, that is impossible to be not true because every cell in the being recognizes it as the truth.
You are listening to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, providing those with the desire to grow with the simple, consistent actions needed to master personal development and create the life they yearn for. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas. A few years ago, I found myself unfulfilled and unmotivated, like I had lost my sense of purpose and my life was merely passing by. Since then, I've been on a continuous journey of personal development that has transformed every aspect of my life. Now, my mission is to inspire you to grow, stand out, and take action towards a purposeful and fulfilling life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, people who share their journey, milestones, and learnings for you to be inspired to grow. In each episode, you will find practical action points that you can implement right now. So make sure you follow the podcast to get them as soon as they are released. In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Thornhill. Michael, you are a traditionally trained plant spirit healer, professional channel and advocate of trauma-informed care. A big part of your own healing journey has been recovering from addiction, trauma and abuse. You now dedicate your life to helping others heal themselves. You are the co-founder of Casa Galactica in Peru, where you help people activate their intuition, empower their healing and embody their truth. Michael, it's a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Aggie, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, an absolute pleasure to be here. So grateful. Thank you very much.
It's the conversations that I enjoy really, really much of having, Michael. And there are many things I want to ask about the traditionally trained plant spirit healer. Before we go there, I would like to go a little bit further back and get some background from you and maybe that own healing journey that led to that. But if you could just take us back before all that, what was happening with Michael? What was maybe the situation that triggered the transformation?
Yes. I guess the trigger for transformation was incarnating on Earth. I think that's the first one I could say. But if we want to break that down a little bit more, I was heavily addicted to a lot of different drugs. I was partying a lot. I was DJing a lot. I was living in the UK. And sometimes I feel like the culture in the UK lends itself quite well to addiction and drinking and alcohol. But I think I was taking that to quite an extreme level. Yet I was what you might call a successful addict. I was doing very well in business, in headhunting, in recruitment and energy headhunting, and also then had my own company for renewable energy headhunting, where we were giving some money to charity. We were doing renewable energy work, and it was more aligned than the work I was doing previously. But I still found myself very heavily addicted to drugs, to work, to money, to sex, to whatever it may be. And for me, the catalyst, I think really, well, a few different catalysts. One is the catalyst of then having your own company and then still being depressed. When you think, if I just have my own company and if I just don't have to do what anyone else says, and then for a little while it was okay. But then after that, it was still there, and the addictions were definitely there. And I guess with more time, space, and money, that also means that the limitation for the financial limitation for addictions is also not there. So I was definitely down spiraling in that sense. But my mother, who'd been ill my whole life, She passed away about 6 years ago. And at that point, that was really a catalytic moment for me to look death in the face, to really consider my life more. And I had an extra motivation, one might say, to heal from these addictions. So even though that I had tried several times to reduce drinking, smoking, drugs, to have periods of abstinence, it was always very short-lived. But I got into meditation. I tried meditation, and I started working with an energy healer who then told me about ayahuasca. And it was when I then had my first ayahuasca ceremony whilst I was living in Berlin, in Germany. I had a profound transformational experience that within this one weekend, I stopped drinking, smoking, stopped drugs, stopped all these different things. Actually, it was just miraculous in a way that was very different, because there was a substantial change where I didn't crave it as much. It wasn't just like before. It was always like, well, I'm just going to not do it. So there was a fundamental change in my being that I didn't want that as much. And following that, the short version of the story is I did another ayahuasca journey very shortly afterwards, a week or so. And then after that, I realized that I needed to integrate my experiences. And I took a month trip to India to learn Reiki. But I ended up staying there, traveling. I ended up going into Nepal and India and learning yoga, and staying there, surrounding myself with different spiritual practices that were really awakening me into this new life that was there, because I was very closed down, non-spiritual, non-religious, very logical, medicinal chemistry degree from Manchester University. And this whole new world was illogical in my mind at the time. And I then had a trip to Peru booked to go into a shamanic initiation course. I went into the jungle for 3 months to work more with ayahuasca, to go deeper into my own healing process, and also to learn how to facilitate ceremony and ultimately how to lead ceremony. But I ended up staying here after that and got an apprenticeship, studying with indigenous shamans, facilitating at a retreat center, and continuing to go through my own process of healing and evolution, which was going to even deeper levels of the core of addictions, which the first ceremony I recognized was a lack of unconditional love. And then over the past 6 years or so has been uncovering and healing from violent sexual ritual abuse that was completely repressed, completely unconscious, and was a large cause for the depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, and ideation that I had no explanation for. So before, I had no explanation for why I was addicted to things, and was just told that I was an addict, told that I was a bad person, which continued to compound the limiting beliefs which were already present within my being. And then through this healing with plant medicines, I've been able to uncover the root cause of addiction, the abuse, the suffering, the trauma, and then gone through a process of healing that and stepping into service to help others heal and evolve as well. And it was whilst I was in the jungle that I met my wife, Jamie, who's from Oklahoma in the States, an incredible healer, intuitive medium, and all-around awesome human. And together we founded Casa Galactica, because we found that there was a lack of trauma-informed care, a lack of safety and integrity in many ways that people work with medicine. So we've really created a hub for trauma-informed healing practices and care with a multidimensional nature, with plant medicines embedded with unconditional love and imbued with empowerment teachings to help everyone remember that they're their own healer. And all this work that people come and do with us is really an activation for people to come home to the truth of who they are, and that can be then shared in their own life in whatever way their soul's blueprint may be.
Thank you. And before we carry on with this, I want to go back a little bit, because something that intrigued me very much when you said that you went to Berlin and you had that miraculous experience of your first ayahuasca ceremony. My question is, because you said that earlier on you didn't have any spiritual calling or anything like that. That's what I understood it. So what kind of transformation, and maybe I know that it's not easy to describe in words many times, but what kind of transformation can happen in one weekend or in one event that can turn someone, in this case you, into completely changing their path? Is there something that you can describe about that experience that really um, changed the way that you lived your life, really?
Absolutely. I'll describe I think in two forms. Firstly, I'll describe at least one way.
Mm-hmm.
In this first weekend retreat, I was feeling the contact with my mother's spirit, and I'd experienced this in an energy healing session, and it was tangible, it was real, and it didn't make sense to me in this energy healing session. And I didn't know. And I tried to rationalize this, that perhaps I was going crazy or was finding some way to deal with the grief of the loss of my mother, and that I was making things up. And then I had the same but much more powerful experience within the ayahuasca ceremony that was something to describe which is beyond words, which is a knowing. It's not a knowing with the brain, it's not a knowing with the mind, it's a knowing with the entire being that is unwavering, that is impossible to be not true, because every cell in the being recognizes it as the truth. And that I'd never had that experience before. I also, in that moment, recognized and realized that due to the illness of my mother, as partial of that, and to what I didn't recognize as trauma, I didn't uncover that till later on. But for whatever reason, this lack, this hole, this void of unconditional love, that I wasn't aware of what unconditional love was. I could see that the love experience in my life was very much conditional. And I went back to the experience of being born in this lifetime and experiencing the unconditional love of my family as I was kind of born and then led on my mother's chest. And the family for that moment felt unconditional love and happiness. And then I also saw that very quickly, as kind of life takes hold and having a family and all of the trauma that arises through being human, quite quickly tainted that. And that wasn't accessible to me. And it definitely wasn't accessible in my conscious memory. So I could see that the synthetic addictions that I was chasing was I was actually looking for unconditional love, and simultaneously having the recognition that I am unconditional love and that unconditional love is available to me, that it's never left. So there in that moment, I realized that what I was looking for was already here. So that, and that's not someone telling me that. That's not a therapist saying, well, you know, you're addicted to this because of this, this, and this. Go away and think about that. This was just an absolutely deep knowing experience. You know, and I've worked with therapists before and after ayahuasca, and that's nothing against therapy. It's a very, very powerful practice. But this is just a experience that was taken straight to the core of that. And I didn't have any spiritual inclination, didn't have any recognition of what this, and it was this undeniable experience that once you see that, once you know that, you can't go back. And then simultaneously in the next part, I had an experience where I found myself going out into the cosmos and having communication contact with these different energetic beings that were showing me, again, experientially showing me through feeling, somatically, very deep, like awakening of the cells of the body. Every time that you drink, every time that you smoke, every time that you go and follow through these addictions, you are going away from your life path. This is not your life path. You're distracting away from your life path. And then I could see that the institutions that I'd grown up in and that had believed, and working in the rat race, working in very capitalistic companies, and working in all these different things, I could see that was also a lie, and that wasn't part of my truth, because it could be someone else's truth. That's not to say that it's right or wrong, but I could see for me that this was just illusion on top of lie, on top of what might call mind control, to try and get you to continue to churn that wheel of the capitalistic wheel in that way. And I could see this again experientially. And bear in mind, I just started my own company, and we were successful. We were making a lot of money, and it was a good company. It wasn't necessarily bad. We were doing good things. We were doing good work. Mm-hmm. And then in that moment, I could see that wasn't what I was here to do. And I kind of came back down to earth, purged, and then again I knew I can't go back. I can't go back. I can't unknow what's just awakened. So that was when I decided that I should go to India, because I need some time to integrate this. And, through deep processes and continued and, not necessarily easy decisions, continue to follow that awakening, that seed of awakening. And it wasn't until, many years later that I could really see what occurred in that ayahuasca ceremony was actually really, really aligned in terms of what my life would be, because I never thought that I'd be here owning a retreat center, running a retreat center, being married to my wife, and dedicating our life to helping others. That was not anything within my field of awareness. So when that arose to me, it was confusing. But there was something within inside me that I would say continued to fuel that fire. There was a curiosity, there was that deep knowing, there was something that was so true about that experience that even though that there were still many thoughts, limiting beliefs, doubts, and all those things, they were not enough to douse the fire of awakening. They were not enough to put that out. But there was a choice. At any point in that moment in time, I could have chose to ignore that, but that was not what I chose.
This is a truly fascinating story, and it fascinates me very much how completely, like 180 degrees or somewhere around that angle, one can change their path. Because, and you mentioned, and I had goosebumps at some point when you were saying it was. You said something about the unwavering knowing with the entire being. It was not just intellectual or even bodily knowing. It was all of you that realized the truth. And once you see that, you can't go back. So I think what you said, that it's very difficult to ignore once you see the truth. And there was another thing, and I'm just reiterating now some things that really made a strong point when you were speaking. What you said about the addiction, that you said that every time you would drink or smoke, every single one of those occasions was taking you, and you saw that clearly, it was taking you, I think you said, away from your life's path. It was this kind of description. So thank you. That's a truly fascinating both story, and there are probably 100 things now that I could ask out of that, but I will go back and discuss. You mentioned already healing, evolution. You mentioned these words, and I wanted to go into that a little bit, the healing, the evolution, and the plant medicines and how they are combined. So maybe we can take them one by one, and healing is the first thing that I want to ask about. And in particular, apart from the level of physical healing, which everyone is familiar with, there are some, let's say, different levels or aspects of healing, for the lack of a better word of that. So can you tell me the role of actually, if you can describe to me, I don't want to ask two questions at the same time, just let's start with one. Describe to me, how do you explain healing, or how do you describe healing in your world? What is healing? I hope my question is clear.
Yes, the healing in its purest form, in my experience, is the recognition of oneself as the one infinite creator. and the recognition, that reconnection to source, the awakening to the infinite self, to the true self, to the unconditional self, to the one that was never born, that one that never dies. And the awakening to that in its purest form is healing. Now, there are many different what you might call distortions from that level of purity, and different kind of steps along the way, which are also very valuable. Just like, you can go to a doctor and you can have a knee operation, and that is healing. But on some level, there's an experience that if you've had a painful knee experience and you have that physical healing, but I'd also argue there's an emotional context to that you'll be so grateful to a doctor that, wow, I'm so grateful that doctor was able to study. I'm so grateful that the technology exists. I'm so grateful that we're actually able, this is a miracle. I wasn't able to walk on my knee, and now I'm able to walk again. Is that not the infinite creator expressing itself through human form, therefore being a reflection to you of the magic of the infinite truth of reality? So we can break that down in different parts. But when we bring that to plant medicines, what plant medicines, as I've kind of described, just a kind of very, very small fraction of my experience of working with plant medicines, what plant medicines give you, they give you the experience of that direct connection to oneness, God, creator, creation, the universe. However, whatever filters that you might have, whether that be a religious filter or a spiritual filter or even a scientific filter, whatever it may be, they give you access, direct access, that awakening of the entire being that I've described, that is a deep knowing, that is someone telling you something, it's giving you a direct experience. And through direct experience, there is healing, there is awakening, there is truth that cannot be told, it can be invited, and you can experience it directly. And that's what plant medicines are very, very powerful with. And just to stay on the context of healing, we work with ayahuasca in our 10-day ayahuasca healing and evolution retreats, but we also work with a plethora of different Amazonian and Andean plant medicines, which are designed to heal the mind, body, and the spirit and the emotional body. So we treat every aspect of the being with the recognition and the awareness that many physical conditions and ailments can be a product of stuck spiritual or emotional blockages that, when not dealt with at the emotional and the spiritual level, can then manifest into a physical illness because it's not been dense enough to be recognized or to be aware of. So when we're dealing with that at the root cause might not actually be in the physical. The physical might be like the leaves of the tree or what's arising. So if we're going to go into the root, it might go into karmic, it might go into personal, emotional, spiritual conditions. That might be a choice for incarnational experience. It might be karmic, or it might be abuse, or it might be repressed memories, or it might be a whole plethora of different things. But whatever it is, the plants work intelligently to help heal that at the root cause. So I'm just going to pause there because I feel like you might have another comment or a question that might have been stirred.
Quite a few, actually, Michael. But I will repeat in my own words something you said, that it was, in a way, the direct answer to what I asked you about the levels or the aspects of healing and the physical healing. And you mentioned the stuck emotional or spiritual energies or ailments that and also from my experience, especially chronic diseases or things like that usually manifest as a result of something else rather than just the body. I'm not going to even go into the traditional medicine's approach that we are like a machine, or it's mechanical and biochemical, and all we need to do is fix the chemistry of the body or the physics of it. There was another thing that you said about plant medicine, and I think it was mainly about ayahuasca you were speaking, that it gives you direct access the experience. I suppose for many people that would be something that they really want or desire, and it can really change their life. Is it though this direct access experience, can it be problematic? Can it be dangerous for someone? And if so, what is that? Is there a line between, going down that path and exploring and wanting to gain that direct access and the word, the phrase spiritual awakening comes to mind, which whatever, however it can be translated. But is there a fine line between, going and doing and accessing this directly versus not, and going maybe in more slow or traditional ways that don't have this kind of direct and immediate impact on one's spiritual, understanding, shall we say?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Aggie. So the first thing, what we describe our work for at Casa Galactica is that we are for dedicated inner truth seekers. So we describe that. Jamie and I would describe ourselves as dedicated inner truth seekers. And that's how we share our work with people, that this is the particular way that we work with people for healing and for evolution. A very specific intention here of dedicated inner truth seekers for healing and evolution. Now, when you describe the fine line, for us, it's more of a clear, opaque line of safety. There's not, we don't work with fine lines in terms of safety margins. We work with very clear boundaries if something is appropriate or not. It's just as if you were going for an operation, if you were going for a heart surgery, the doctor wouldn't say, well, there's a fine line here. You might die, so good luck. Unless obviously in that situation where there was no other option, that it's a life-saving surgery, there's a risk. So very much here we have medical guidelines on our website. We have a very, very deep intake process, which begins with, if even without, signing up for anything, you can have a free 30-minute consultation to talk about your own personal conditions, your own situation with regards to health conditions, mental health conditions. We then have very detailed content about what medical contraindications are and the risks are to help people make informed decisions. Once we have this very, very also in-depth health and wellness screening questionnaire that goes into 100% confidential trauma-informed care practices for your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health background. And then once we're able to review that, we have a one-on-one personalized consultation with you to go through that form and to really dive into in depth to make sure that there's no contraindications with what you're going to be doing and what your situation is. At that point, we accept you onto the retreat. So for us, it's a very clear line if something's safe or something's unsafe. Now, where there may be kind of room for interpretation is this experience for me? Is this, okay, I'm safe, I'm physically, mentally safe to do this. Is this experience for me? Mm-hmm. So the next thing is that the part of the work that we do that is not part of the work that is prevalent within ayahuasca work or plant medicine work. It's more the minority, is in-depth trauma-informed care and safety practices. So
can you explain that for me? You said that a couple of times already, the trauma-informed care. Can you explain that to me, how you mean it?
Yes. So it's a very interesting perspective, which takes into account that everyone who comes to work with us may have experienced some level of trauma, while simultaneously seeing them, every person who comes to us, as whole and complete and having everything that they need. So it's not creating victim mentality. It's not necessarily giving someone special treatment in the sense of, oh, well, you've had this happen to you, so we need to treat you differently to someone else. We give everyone the same treatment in the level that you might have experienced some level of trauma. So we create an environment that should some level of trauma arise for you during the retreat experience, you're held in a safe cushion that as that arises, it's able to be held, to be loved, to be healed. Whereas conversely, what may occur is if it's not in a trauma-informed environment, you may have an experience of re-traumatization. So if something of a deep level of trauma, like in my case of abuse that has arisen that I was completely unaware of, and in my case, I have experienced re-traumatization. I know what it's like to be not looked after while being in another ceremony experience outside of our own work earlier on in my path. And it's not necessary. So in the same situation, if you can think of if you were in a therapy session, for instance, and some of this level, if some of this trauma was arising and the therapist was not trained or aware of how to deal with something, if a repressed memory was to come up in a therapy session, that could be re-traumatizing for the patient because they might not feel heard, they might feel like they're left alone, they might feel like they're ridiculed or something like this. So every aspect of the work that we do is based in trauma-informed care practices. That goes right through to everything about what I've already shared about how much information that we give people on the front end, that everything is a choice, how much medicine that you drink, which activities that you participate in, that we collaborate with people as through the health and wellness screening about creating a personalized treatment program, which makes that we work with different practices, modalities, and plant medicines that are specific for that person. And you never have to participate in anything that you don't want to. Even if you've come and we've poured you the ayahuasca and you go, actually, I've decided that I don't want to drink this, that's absolutely fine. We don't make anyone do anything they don't want to. And this goes right through to, as we're helping people through into ceremony, we're always talking to you. Hey, we're gonna help you here. Going to help you to the bathroom. Is it okay if I put my hand on your shoulder? We'll take you. Given with regards to touch and professional touch and ethics and conduct. So we really take this to what I would describe a very high ethical professional standard, which is actually really passionate for Jamie and I to create these practices and care practices, because Jamie and I both have experienced deep levels of PTSD, deep levels of trauma, deep levels of abuse, and we understand and we know what it's like to have those levels of PTSD come up into a situation and what level of care and standard is required. Now, on the other side of things, you might not have any trauma come up. You might be someone who's actually more on what you might call the evolution side of things and is looking more for this experience and awareness of one reality, of direct consciousness, direct connection to the all consciousness of all things and all this type of stuff. But these trauma-informed care practices still hold you in that environment that create trust, that creates a level of integrity, of confidence. And we do everything we can to create this environment that enables you to be vulnerable, not because we tell you to be vulnerable, but because the nature of the work that we do and the way that we do it invites that vulnerability. It invites the de-armoring of the processes of whatever might have happened that caused you to close down, to close that heart. We give you time, space, and nourishment to be able to realize the truth of who you are in your own way, just like a flower opening on its own accord, one by one, each leaf in the perfect timing.
You can't force it, you can't do anything. All you can do is nurture it or keep it safe. So thank you. That's a wonderful metaphor as well. You mentioned the phrase earlier, dedicated inner truth seekers. Can you give me a couple of characteristics of maybe the dedicated bit more than the other? I think the other is more clear to me, the inner truth seeker, but the dedicated one, what does it imply?
Yeah, well, I'll just talk firstly about, if you think about the process of what we just said about our intake process. So you're going to have a full health and wellness screening questionnaire, and you're going to have a full intake process. To go through that requires a level of someone who wants to actually say, right, I'm dedicated. I want to put the time and effort in to go through this process. And that in itself, our intake process is also a filter on some level, because we want people who are ready to provide all that information to invest in their own safety and invest in the safety of everyone else around them as well. But the recognition for dedicated, and I would say this applies to plant medicines, but also all spiritual paths. And everyone who's listening is on a spiritual path. How many times have you had a chance or had the opportunity to say, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to go any further with this. I don't want to do this. So at that point, that dedicated inner truth seeker, it really implies that you are dedicating to discovering and embodying your inner truth. And the recognition through that point, and through that there may be different challenges that may arise, but the dedication is a dedication to yourself. It's a dedication to love. It's a dedication to the unconditional aspect and nature of your being that loves in spite of everything. All it can do is love. So the dedicated inner truth seeker, as we share it, is something as an invitation for wherever you may be on your spiritual path. If you resonate with that saying, perhaps already there is a part of you, like I've already mentioned, the cells in your being which are tingling, or as a recognition and an awakening. We dedicate our lives to helping dedicated inner truth seekers recognize the truth of who you are. So if that awakens anything in you, please feel free to contact us for a 30-minute consultation, and we can discuss more about your own dedication to inner truth.
That's fantastic. Thank you for this answer. There was something that came into mind that someone might think, I would really like to experience this. However, the thought of then being drawn to leave everything behind and go to India and study yoga and meditation there might not be in my ego's collection of thoughts and what might one not want to do. I'm not sure if there is a question coming out of this. I was just expressing something that came to mind. Based on your experience, what is it that, as a result of having someone coming to the retreat and having the ayahuasca ceremonies, what are maybe some common, obviously for each will be individual, but I suppose there are some common benefits, if I can use that word, or things that change in one's life afterwards. So are there some that come to your mind as frequent ones?
Yes, absolutely. So firstly, just to say that drinking ayahuasca doesn't mean you have to go through a whole process of going around the world and doing all of these things like I did. That was for me, my path. And what we also have as part of our work at Casa Galactica is a full integration program that helps you reintegrate into your life in a way that works for you, and ongoing support after the process. And that wasn't available to me when I started, when I went and just did this one ceremony. So that is a big part of that. But in terms of, if I could describe the common kind of levels of experience, which one might find is, often people who come with physical illnesses and conditions. We just had someone who was on a retreat who had Lyme disease and had a lot of physical symptoms and was on medication since 2013. And whilst on the retreat with us, after coming off the medications and having increased flare-up, and after being on retreat with us, all the physical symptoms stopped, all the physical pain stopped, and that was the first time since 2013 that she'd been without pain medication, without these different medications. So what one might describe is that there can be physical symptoms and conditions that one might have had that cease to exist. And so that can give a different level of quality of life for anyone who's lived with pain or any level of pain. To live and experience life without that pain, without needing medication, can be very profound in itself. Some of the other common kind of experiences that one might have is that you might be in a situation that historically might have been very triggering for you, and then you can find yourself with someone saying something or doing something that would have been like, oh God, I can't believe this person said this. Oh my gosh, all of my buttons have been pressed all at once. Oh God, I can't deal with this. What am I going to do? And then just someone does that again after a retreat, and you're just like, that was interesting. That doesn't affect me anymore. Which is kind of like a signal of the deep inner work that's arose. The other kind of experiences that I can describe is And this really comes along as well from the plant medicine, but also the container that Jamie and I hold because of being multidimensional healers, non-dual teachers, empowerment teachers along the side of this, is the recognition that these teachings can then be applied in one's life to help create more space for the truth of who you are to arise. So people often find themselves with much more passion or desire for the things that they truly like, gravitate towards things that are more in alignment, and kind of move away from things that are less aligned for them. But this can also manifest as just experiencing more joy, peace, compassion, awareness, and a great catalyst of what we say that can often occur within an ayahuasca retreat is that it can be a catalyst for healing and evolution and awakening that might have taken 10 years from practicing yoga or doing therapy alone. So there is, I would say, a couple of different ways to look at this. There's a recognition of the healing which has already occurred, so that there's this change of the entire being, which might manifest as all of those things that I've just said: more love, compassion, less pain, physical symptoms, illnesses no longer occurring or manifesting in those ways. So there's a complete change, and then there's the trajectory which you find yourself on. You've then changed that trajectory. So then if you keep doing that inner work, if you keep practicing that, if you keep integrating the teachings, integrating those direct experiences, in 5 years, you can only imagine the different trajectory which you found. Just like you changed the train tracks, and that train has gone in a different direction for 5 years. And you can imagine where, if you'd gone 5 years in a different train track, how substantial that difference can be. So for me, I'll use that as my own experience, this experience of when I drank ayahuasca for the first time in 2016. If I'd not had that experience, where would I be? I might have committed suicide. I might have died from a drug overdose. I don't know what would have happened. So to quantify that for the individual person, it's a very unique experience. But what we can really guarantee is that you'll go away with more of who you are and less of what you're not. And what context that comes into, it really depends on the individual. It does depend upon the dedication of the inner truth seeker, and also one's own particular soul path and blueprint.
Thank you. That's I love your answer. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm going to ask you in a moment about how can people connect and find about Casa Galactica. Before I do that, I wanted to ask you, based on the conversation we have, is there any something actionable emerging that you can share with the listener? And let's assume here for a moment that the listener is an inner truth seeker, but probably not a dedicated, or maybe not established dedicated one. Let's say he's or she is a curious inner truth seeker. So what's something actionable that one can do based on this conversation to, take one next step towards that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll share a few things. The first thing is, if you're curious and you're a curious inner truth seeker, again, I just invite you to book a free consultation for us, and we can discuss more about that curiosity, provide you with more information that might help transition you from a curious inner truth seeker to a dedicated inner truth seeker, because the doubt might be through lack of information, through lack of education. So we can provide the answers to you that can help shift and transition you. The second thing is, with regards to where you are right now, is that everything that you seek is already here. So you can look for that, whatever that next step for you might be, to take you from a curious inner truth seeker to act upon that curiosity, and whatever level might take you a little bit closer to becoming what we might describe as a dedicated inner truth seeker. And that can be in a myriad of different ways, but begin to investigate that curiosity. If you just allow that curiosity to be there, you might not take any action. So the invitation is to take action that feels appropriate for you. With regards to that also, we have so much content and availability for people who are interested, curious, or dedicated inner truth seekers. And if you sign up to our newsletter on our website at casagalactica.com, then you'll get a 5-hour Fundamentals of Healing Trauma workshop completely free. And within that, there are lots of actionable steps that you could just take that workshop itself and you can begin to implement that. And that can also help transform someone's curiosity into perhaps what might describe more interested or dedicated in that way. So we have a whole bunch of other stuff as well, such as a beginner's guidebook to strengthening your intuition as well. So that all comes with that. So, but for actionable steps that one might take right now is, and I think this is an interesting one that can ask is, what is it about my experience in this reality that I am taking for granted as the truth that I'm not questioning? Is there something, is my experience, is the lens which I see through my life, is this my viewpoint? Are these my beliefs? Or is there just the possibility? Is there just the possibility that some of these beliefs that I have, the way that I see the world, might actually be a product of my environment? They might actually be things that people have said to me. They might actually be other institutions or other people or family members' ideas. Is there a possibility that if I explore that, I might see through the illusion and have an experience of reality that is much more aligned? And these types of questions that might come from that curious inner truth seeker, seeing through that lens, changing that lens, really wiping the lens of what we see and just magnifying and purifying the truth of who we are. So that would be something as an exercise that I would begin to question.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And I will put the links to your website on the show notes. I have also, Michael, some quick fire questions, actually 3 of them to wrap this conversation up. And the first one I always ask is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development for me means being brave and continuing to heal, to continuing to evolve with the humble recognition that one does not know everything and one can never know everything.
Thank you. And hypothetically, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
I would probably say, don't worry about doing all the drugs. Have fun. You'll get over it and you'll have a healthy life later on. It's
an interesting one. Yeah. Enjoy it while it lasts. Based on the conversation we had today, is there one book in particular that you would recommend to the listener?
Yes, I would recommend for anyone who is looking for a deeper understanding of reality of consciousness to look at the channeled book called Ra, which is R-A, The Law of One. So Ra, The Law of One, channeled by Carla Rucker and some other people as well. And that is a very deep exploration of consciousness and will be a great next step also.
Michael, I want to thank you very much. This has been a truly intriguing, fascinating conversation. I want to wish you all the very best. This is very important, I believe, what you're doing. And I was telling you earlier before we started recording that looking at your website made me realize how thorough and comprehensive one can be, and you certainly are that. So thank you very much again for the conversation. I wish you all the very best in your mission with empowering and healing and enlightening others. Any last parting words from you?
No, just absolute gratitude and thank you again, Aggie, for having this beautiful conversation. And very, very grateful and to everyone. And invite you to check out our website. We also work with people online in a myriad of different ways of channeling sessions, trauma healing sessions, and courses as well. So even if you're not feeling the call to come to Peru please check out our website, and there are many different ways that we can assist you. And I think just the final reflection is that I would say to everyone is that there are many paths back home to the one. So choose the one that you enjoy, and choose the one that feels most resonant for you. Do the thing which is difficult sometimes, and ask for help in whatever way that might be. There's so many different resources available to us these days, varying from free experiences through to retreat experiences and beyond. But just invitation to ask for help and trust in your process of healing and evolution.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you got great value from today's episode. And if you'd be so kind, please take a moment to leave me an Apple Podcasts review, sharing how Personal Development Mastery has made a difference to you today. And I will read the review in the podcast. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,